Hi everyone. Thank you for watching now on the new link. I'm sorry about the technical problems we had earlier. I think now probably you are listening. So I just want to make sure. I know the chat is not activated, so you can reply me. But I'm counting on a few messages arriving in a few seconds, so we can start. Um,
Can we start then?
I don't know.
Testing.
I don't know. I don't know
I,
if
I'm
everyone's
going.
listening right
I'm
now.
going. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask one of my colleagues to tell me if they're listening, if they can hear something.
Yeah, because they're probably tired of listening to me. You're the one they're not listening right now. Okay, so yeah, it checked. So now we're good and we can
Okay.
go forward. So thank you so much, everybody, to staying with us now on this new link and this transmission. So this is the first idea talk, and because of that, we had these technical problems. But the going for going further and straight to the point, to what matters. I'm Vanessa from IDEA, and now we're introducing the subject online education with Pedro Queiró. Thank you so much, Pedro, to joining us once again.
Thank you for having me.
So Pedro is co-founder of Dreamshaper. And the first question we must ask you now with a hearing answer is what what is what is it online education exactly? What can we um, well, is it about technology? Is it about I don't know? Is it about the methods we use? What is it when we speak of online education?
So, online education is the use of online software tools to deliver education, and it's a means to an end. It's not a goal in itself. So the idea is always to ensure that your students learn and grow. But it's where online education happens when you use software platforms because you can't be close to your student. Either be it because there's a pandemic going on and everyone's staying at home, and so you can't go to school to get your education. You have to receive it by other means, or if your students are just too far away, as might happen in certain countries like Brazil and India, where there are very remote populations that don't have the infrastructure to have a local school. So often these populations are served by some kind of distance learning method through the internet if there is internet access, or through other means if there isn't internet access. So
Okay.
that's the basics of online education.
Okay, but it's not the same. We can't say that it's the same giving a class to your students when you're in the same physical space and when you're talking them through a camera, for instance. What do you think is this key to make it work as education
Okay.
using these technologies?
It depends wildly on the age of your student. So the first part of your question is, obviously, it's not the same thing, okay? But depending on what you're trying to teach, and especially how old your student is, it can actually be very effective. And depending on how you do this online education, it can also be very effective. So basically, right now, apart from situations where you might be teaching very remote populations, most online education actually happens at the corporate level, so corporate training and a lot of e-learning, where you do it with adults. And adults are very good at actually absorbing information and processing it and consolidating it on their own, because they're fully grown adults. They've developed the neurological structures to be able to do that. When you're doing it with younger students, that's where things get tricky, because there are a lot of skills of neurological skills that you only really develop with face-to-face contact. You don't really develop them, looking at a computer screen. So you have to be careful. The online education doesn't really replace in-person education, especially with younger students. Having said that, there are ways around it. And going to the second part of your question, the way you should be doing online education isn't just sitting people down on a Zoom meeting and saying, okay, so 9 to 10 you have Portuguese class, the 10 to 11 you have maths class. That's not going to work, because the younger your student is, the more likely they're going to just switch off and completely miss out on what you're trying to teach. So what you should be doing through online education is leveraging the online part, which means that students can actually do things, and they can do things online. And you should move towards a more active learning method where you reduce sort of classroom settings, where you reduce the time where teachers are throwing knowledge at the student, and instead you replace that with active projects and other the challenges that mean the student has to do things. That's actually a very big change for schools, but that's how you make it work if you really want to go online.
Okay, because that is a really permanent concern of parents these days, because they're asked to to keep up with their children along these Zoom meetings, as you were saying, that exist. So, how can parents help, or and what are the needs? Because in this quarantine, parents are asked to spend a lot of time with their children and keeping up with their studies. But in online education, when we look to the future, this is also a need, is something that will also occur, or can we change that through those methods you were talking about?
So the problem is, short term, the problem is that you ask the several education systems around the world to go, hey, so we're closing schools next week, figure something out. That's why people are kind of defaulting to this idea that, oh, let's recreate the school at home. Now the thing is, schools, if you really look at the allocation of resources, schools actually spend more money on crowd control than they spend on actual learning. And that's actually a need when you have 600, 700, 1,000 young people in the same building, and you have to make sure that they're all in by this hour, and they have to learn something during the day. You really do need crowd control. And so when you moved everyone into their homes and people started trying to rebuild the school in the house, there was a need for someone to do crowd control. And the only adult available is your parents. And that's why, like you said, parents are being asked to interface and really keep an eye on and support their kids during their learning activities. And that doesn't really work, because parents are probably either trying to work themselves, so they'll probably only have one computer and the parent has to use it for a meeting, and then the kid comes up, oh, but I have a Zoom class. Oh, sorry, parent meetings are more important. So that doesn't really work, and that's not that's not because schools are trying to screw over parents. It's because no one knows how to solve this. Last time we had a pandemic was more than 100 years ago. No one has a playbook. So in the short term, that's kind of the problem. And I would ask you to be kind to your teacher, especially as a parent. You might try to suggest, or try to help your teacher. Talk to them about active learning techniques. Or maybe my kids should be doing some kind of research project that doesn't involve so much screen time, because I need the screen time for myself because I have meetings at work, and because in that way the student is more autonomous in their work. And that's the key thing about active learning, is promoting autonomy and proactivity in the students. And in this context, this actually means you should be giving out challenges that the student can grab them and go read a book, and they can go do an experiment with something they have in the kitchen, or they can pick up the phone and call someone and ask them questions and conduct some kind of interview. I don't know, maybe they could call their history teacher and ask them about the Industrial Revolution or something. Um,
Let
this is
me
the kind of activities. Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Let me ask you. So these active learning you're talking about is
Yeah.
something that it's Dreamshaper approach, isn't it? When you're talking about active learning, or is it something that it's spread and you have just a tool so teachers and students can use?
So, Dreamshaper is an online project building platform. This is a very complete and very productive way of doing active learning. So you parcel out challenges, and then Dreamshaper has a methodology that guides students along and which enables students to be very autonomous in their work. So yeah, Dreamshaper is actually a very easy and very effective way of implementing active learning in your school if you're in a pinch and you really need to sort it out. Having said that, there are other techniques that you could use. They rely more on the teacher being very creative and very technically proficient. And if your teacher is creative and technically proficient, then go ahead. If your teacher isn't as creative and isn't as computer fluent as you would like, then yeah, Dreamshaper is a great way to go because it allows you to just tell the student, so this is your challenge, and then the student comes in. There's a set of steps that guides the student. There's a little bit of intelligence behind it, trying to guide the student depending on what kind of project they're doing. Maybe they're being more of an academic research project, or they're doing a more entrepreneurial thing, or they're trying to just build a practical demonstration of some kind of scientific principle. So there's different kinds of projects, and at the end of the day, they get like a deliverable. They can submit to the teacher for the teacher to evaluate. That allows it to be done with teachers that might not be so um, comfortable with technology.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot of technology and the need to use technology for these days of quarantine. Do you think this is just a step to go along that way and we're implementing on a daily basis, or when we go back to school and go back to our lives, we're going back to the traditional education and just like it was before?
No, it's not going to happen. There are too many good things about technology for people to go back. The reason why a lot of these techniques and these platforms haven't been adopted in the past wasn't that they weren't good. It's that there's a lot of inertia, and so it's very difficult for school systems to change. If you think about Portugal, we have about 2.5 million students, and we're a small country. If you're trying to change an entire system that moves that many people at the same time, it's very difficult. I think that's what's going to happen is that schools are going to undergo this transformation very quickly because they have to. And after that, they're going to realize that there are a lot of good things about it. And so they're not going to want to go back. Okay. Once they realize they can do different things and they can actually be much more efficient in their teaching than they were before, they're not going to go back.
Okay, so I've heard or read somewhere that Dreamshaper wanted to change education systems. I think that's what you said. What do you
Yeah.
mean about changing education systems? Education is like we started from that. It's a lot of things, methods, platforms. So how is it that you want to change it?
So we want to change it towards a more practical and applied approach. Okay, so the technical term is you have right now what you have are very behavioral approaches where most classes, most schools, not all schools, but most schools basically stick 30 kids in a room. There's an adult at the front, and the adult just sort of throws knowledge at students' heads and hopes that something sticks by the exam. And that's the way we've been doing it for decades, but it's far from efficient. It's far from effective as well. And there are better ways of doing it. The way that we're trying to change it is we're trying to sort of turn this around and have the student actually lead their own process of learning by deploying these active learning techniques. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to enable schools and teachers to actually come into a classroom and give out challenges, and then the students go out into the world and they learn by executing these challenges. These challenges can be about researching something, about building something, about going into the classroom next door and asking someone for help. And by building their own learning as they go through these challenges, there's a lot of science that actually demonstrates that students have increased retention and absorption of knowledge. They develop a whole host of skills that they wouldn't develop otherwise. Things like resilience, organization, discipline. These are things that students develop by actually doing things and not by listening to teachers, and certainly not by sitting exams. And so what we're trying to do is change it that way. We're not trying to do away with teachers or throw away schools entirely. Teachers and schools are good things, and there's a lot of value in that interaction. What we're trying to do is to change what happens once you're inside the classroom by making it more applied and more active from the student's viewpoint.
Okay, and I think you can say that with some assured that that will work, because as long as I'm concerned, you have at least 150,000 students using Dreamshaper. And what I want to ask you now is, where are you going? So from here, from students around Europe and South America and so many countries,
Yeah.
where are you going now? So what's the next step?
So our next step actually was to go into Italy. We were actually planning on going into Milan when this whole thing broke out. So that was a surprise.
Okay.
We had to readjust on the fly. Right now, in the short term, we're focusing very hard on Portugal because it's a country that we know very well, and it's a country where there are thousands of schools who desperately need help. So for the short term, we're focused on helping people in Portugal who need this kind of solution. When this once this ends, we're hoping to expand across Europe, especially to Spain and Italy, which were our two sort of priority markets before that. And we think once the pandemic is settled, we'll be able to resume that strategy. Not least because they're experiencing the exact same problems we are right now, and so they're going to undergo that very rapid transformation that we are going through in Portugal. So I think they're going to be very receptive to our tools once we get over there.
Pedro,
Yeah.
I'm receiving some questions, which is a good sign. Okay, so what is the
Great.
best advice you can give to all the parents that suddenly become teachers? I think this is a practical question. We were talking about this need. What advice will you give?
Oh, I know, I know. I feel their pain. I have a daughter of my own, and she has Zoom classes, and it's ridiculous because she's 2 years old, and her school actually came up with video classes. They do like baby yoga and and gymnastics for 2 year olds through Zoom. It's ridiculous. The advice I would give parents is reach out to your teachers. Okay, so your child's teachers are as lost as you are, and they're trying to do the best that they can. If you reach out to them and you actually tell them, so hey, I heard about this thing where you can use Dreamshaper to do, you can conduct classes in a different way that doesn't require as much parental interaction. Reach out to them and say that. Check out things like Escola Virtual from Porta Editora or Aula Digital from Leia. They provide lots of great resources that your child can explore without asking you for help. Um, and at the end of the day, just try to understand that everyone's in the same boat, and all of us are trying to sort of get away with it and survive this pandemic. But the key thing is here would be reach out to your teacher, tell them that there are better ways of doing this, and suggest those ways of doing it. They will thank you because they really need it as well.
Okay, and it's true that we were talking about this, but I think we didn't focus on that point. There are schools in Portugal, I mean, in our country, that already use some of these technologies, and others that don't. Why is that? Can you say why? Any
It
ideas?
depends very. It depends a lot on the teacher. So um, there are some teachers that are very technically proficient, and so they introduce these techniques sort of naturally. And the teachers are usually the key driver in adopting these things. Usually, it starts with the teacher, then the teacher shows this to his colleagues, and their colleagues start adopting it, and it suddenly gets to the board, and the board says, "Oh, this is nice. Let's do it for the entire school." That's more or less how it happens, but it depends on the teacher being very technically proficient. If you're in a school where there isn't sort of an early adopter, pioneering teacher, it might be very difficult to penetrate and get down to that level. You know, if you're a parent and you want to help this along, you should try to figure out who might be the very technically proficient teacher. Maybe it's the computer and IT teacher. Maybe sometimes it's not, maybe sometimes it's a younger teacher, maybe sometimes it's an older teacher that is very curious about this. I've worked with schools where it's like the economics teacher for the secondary school who turned out to be the very proficient one. I've worked with schools where it's the third grade teacher that's very technically proficient. Find that teacher and ask him for help, because that's usually the more efficient way of transforming a very old school into a more technically proficient place.
Okay, our time is coming to an end. I'm gonna make one more question.
Go ahead.
So, as an entrepreneur, this one is tricky. I don't know how you're gonna answer this. So, if you had to construct, to make a class to how to build a successful education platform, what subjects and what models will you introduce in this class?
So the first thing would be, I would throw out the idea of subjects entirely. The most efficient way of teaching is actually to go across disciplines. So you should be trying to mix various elements into the same project. That's the first thing I would do. I would throw that away completely. Second thing I would do is I would throw away most of what's done in classic schools with timetables and such, because you have to fit in with people's lives, and if you try to force people into fitting in with your timetables, it can actually be very counterproductive. There's some interesting research that actually suggests that young kids would learn more if classes were to start later, because they need more sleep. That's also a very interesting thing. So what I would do to build sort of the perfect class would be, I would get the teachers from the various subjects into a room, and I would get them to build the integrated cross-discipline challenges that students could then prosecute. And then I would enable the students as much as possible in their pursuit of these challenges, so that they would be able to develop their skills in a more natural way. Now, it's possible to do this and still allow the various professors to have different pieces of coursework to evaluate. For instance, if you set them, I don't know, let's make something on the spot. I spoke about the Industrial Revolution earlier. Let's imagine this is 8th grade history. You could set a challenge. Okay, so you have to go and research the key scientific advances that enabled the Industrial Revolution. That's going to produce a deliverable for your physics and chemistry teacher. That's going to produce a deliverable for your Portuguese teacher when you submit your final report. You can come up with something that the students have to apply, something they've learned in maths, and then you can ask them to make a presentation in English. And that way, you have one project that the student can really sink their teeth into. They can build something really meaningful and still produce learnings in various different disciplines. And that is actually how you really, really, really maximize efficiency in terms of the learning experience.
Okay, but I'm gonna make my question other way. It's very helpful what you just explained, but I mean, for as an entrepreneur and concerning Dreamshaper, what would be the lessons you'd give, or the essays you'd ask to your students that are now starting or thinking about going with an idea in front and see what they get?
Okay, I would tell them to think about this pandemic and this quarantine as a huge learning opportunity, because it's been a learning opportunity for everyone. It's been a learning opportunity for us as well, and to make the most of it, because it's a time when there's a lot of creativity going around, and it's a time where you can actually come up with something and help out. I would encourage them to try and build, try and explore as many of their ideas as possible, and to reach out to other people who are actually doing it. Communities like Tech for COVID, for instance. There's a lot of people who are coming together and being very creative and trying to come up with new things. If you're someone who's actually thinking of oh, I would like to explore this entrepreneurship thing, but I'm in the middle of a pandemic and I'm afraid, join one of these communities. There's a lot of people doing some very interesting things online, and they're very helpful and they're very encouraging. And now is the best time to do it because you're stuck at home. It's not like you're missing out on classes. So go out and do it.
Yeah, just do it. Exactly.
Exactly. Think of Nike.
Yeah, try it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And if you need a software platform to develop it, we actually have an entrepreneurship course in Dreamshaper, so you can always come and knock on our door. We can help you.
Yeah, that's the spirit, Pedro. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for to you who are listening, and we meet again next week on Monday, actually with Virginia Coutinho from Lisbon Digital School. So I hope to see you next week. Thank you so much. Stay safe and let's build together. Bye.
Bye.